What happens when the most powerful person in the terminal isn't recognized, on purpose? At exactly 6 a.m., JFK International pulsed with sterile fluorescence. The floor still smelled faintly of disinfectant, the kind that clings to polished tile and early nerves. Luggage wheels whispered across concrete. Security radios buzzed in clipped bursts. Outside, the first orange light of dawn bled across the tarmac like a warning. Inside, business travelers flowed like a practiced rhythm. Coffee in one hand, status in the other. But one woman moved differently. Celeste Vaughn, 35, cut through the terminal like a scalpel. Precise, focused, and dressed in a navy wool suit, sharp enough to slice through steel. No entourage, no noise, just a jet-black leather briefcase in one hand and a non-refundable one-way ticket to Zurich in the other. She didn't need attention. She commanded space without asking. To most people here, she looked like just another executive flying premium. Unassuming, maybe even forgettable. What they didn't know, what they didn't bother to look close enough to see, was that Celeste Vaughn owned more leverage inside this airport than the airline's CEO himself. Through shell firms, silent partnerships, and one ironclad investment portfolio, she held the financial lifeline of 3 major airport vendors, including the very airline she was flying today. And she didn't come here to be seen, she came here to watch. But what happens when the system built to ignore people like her goes too far? Because in less than 90 minutes, Celeste Vaughn would go from quietly boarding a first-class seat to unleashing a calculated strike that would cost the company $600 million. Before wheels even left the ground, and it would all start with 6 words from a gate agent who didn't bother checking her name. This area is for first class only. Now buckle up, because everything that happens next isn't about race or boarding passes. It's about power, and what happens when the wrong system tries to humiliate the wrong woman. And she doesn't just fight back, she erases them. The line for first-class check-in shimmered under cold white lights, pristine and calculated like everything else inside JFK International's Terminal 5. Polished chrome, quiet murmur, the occasional clack of designer heels across marble. Celeste Vaughn stepped forward, the click of her boots subtle but confident. She was unhurried, composed. Her tailored navy blue suit hugged her frame like armor, the leather handle of her briefcase smooth against her palm. She held up her phone. Boarding Group 1, Seat 1A, Zurich bound. But the man behind the counter didn't look at her pass. He looked at her, and then past her. "Economies to the left," he said, voice flat, eyes already shifting to the man in loafers approaching behind her. Celeste didn't flinch. "I'm flying first class," she said calmly, her tone the kind of neutral that came from years of being misread and never corrected. She lifted the phone slightly higher. The barcode was clear, undeniable. Still, the attendant kept his arm outstretched. "Left lane, economy check-in." There was no apology, no verification. There was no apology, no verification, just dismissal. Behind her, the man in loafers, a white guy in his 40s, Patagonia vest, Bluetooth earpiece, received a wide smile and a warm, "Good morning, Mr. Adler." His boarding pass was scanned. "Still or sparkling?" he was asked. Celeste's grip tightened on her phone. Her heartbeat didn't spike. It slowed, calculating. She said nothing. Not here, not yet. She stepped back, pivoted, and moved around to the premium kiosk, where a second agent glanced at her phone, scanned it, and smiled faintly. "Oh, you're in 1A. Great seat." As if the moment before hadn't happened, as if being erased was normal. Celeste took the printed boarding pass, her fingers brushing the edge just a beat longer than necessary. The paper felt flimsy compared to what it represented. She turned, walked toward security, boots clicking again, this time sharper. The pre-check lanes glowed faintly green, guiding travelers toward efficiency. Celeste moved right, global entry and nexus clearance in hand. The TSA agent, young and overtrained, scanned her documents and paused. "You've been randomly selected for standard screening," he said. "Excuse me?" Her voice remained level. He shrugged. Sometimes the system kicks people out. As if the system wasn't built that way. Behind her, a white woman in a cashmere coat breezed through, untouched. So did a man with a backpack slung low across one shoulder. Celeste said nothing. She stepped into the secondary line. Her bag was pulled, laptop removed, confidential folders flipped open, bare hands, no gloves. One labeled Helios Capital pending. "You work in finance?" the agent asked, flipping pages like cheap tabloids. She looked at him. "That's above your pay grade." He smirked. "Sure it is." A supervisor passed, said nothing. A fellow traveler stared, said nothing. Celeste zipped her bag herself. Her fingers were steady, her breath measured. This wasn't just a delay, it was a message. "You don't belong here." Not screamed, whispered in the choreography of glances, shrugs, and overlooked credentials. She walked out of screening not defeated, but changed. The rules had shifted, and so would her response, because what they hadn't realized was that they didn't just mishandle a passenger. They picked a fight with the CEO, and she never showed up to lose. Celeste exited security with the calm of someone used to sharp edges, but the ground was already shifting beneath her. The moment she reached the digital kiosk near gate D12 to confirm her seat assignment, the screen blinked, then blinked again. Her name appeared, but the seat beside it no longer read 1A. Instead, 3 simple characters stared back in quiet insult. 32B, a middle seat, economy, near the rear restrooms, overflow. She tapped again, heart steady but breath held. No upgrade options, no seating changes, just that one seat, the one nobody chooses unless they have no other choice. Celeste turned toward the gate desk, her heels slicing the floor like knives. But the agent on duty was new, uncertain, and hiding behind a monitor like it was a shield. He didn't look up. "My seat has been reassigned without request," Celeste said. "I need to speak to someone with override access." The agent blinked. I can escalate that for you, ma'am, but once the manifest is locked, unlock it. We don't have that kind of clearance." Celeste narrowed her eyes. "Then find someone who does." The agent hesitated, then scribbled a number on the back of a receipt slip. "You can call guest relations. They handle profile disputes." "I'm not calling anyone," she replied. "I'm standing right here." She walked away before he could say another word. At the Haven Air first-class lounge entrance, the scanner blinked red. "Your access has been revoked," the receptionist said, her voice buttered in forced apology. Celeste didn't flinch. "Recheck it. I paid for full international first class." The woman tapped again. "It looks like your ticket was downgraded 17 minutes ago." No notice, no request. And yet, here we are. The receptionist looked down, avoided eye contact. "I'm sorry, Ms. Vaughn." Celeste stepped back, pivoted on her heel, and made her way toward the pre-flight dining zone, a place where medically approved meals were arranged ahead of time for premium passengers. Her dietary needs were non-negotiable: autoimmune protocol, gluten-free, dairy-free, low sodium. She'd submitted the order 4 days ago, but when she presented her boarding pass to the host, he scanned it, frowned, and said, "You're not listed." Celeste's jaw tightened. "I was. 4 hours ago." "I'm sorry, but we don't have a meal under your current reservation." Behind her, a man in a linen blazer stepped forward and requested a vegan keto option. The host handed it to him. Celeste stared. It was the exact meal she had ordered. He took it without looking back. She didn't speak. She didn't demand. She turned and walked away. No food, no lounge, no access, and the message was getting clearer. She wasn't just being inconvenienced, she was being erased. Small privileges, quiet removals. One layer of credibility peeled away at a time until only the silhouette of a problem remained. Celeste found a bench near a support column and sat. She placed her briefcase beside her. Her fingers curled slightly around the handle, tight and deliberate. They weren't trying to delay her flight. They were trying to erase her presence. But what they failed to realize was that the quieter she got, the closer she was to detonating. The air near gate D12 had shifted. It was no longer just stale with recycled oxygen. It was charged, pulsing with the kind of static that precedes a storm. Celeste sat with her tablet open on her lap, fingers poised to reroute her day. Rebook meetings in Zurich, notify legal, pull her assistant into a backup plan. But the moment she tried to connect to Haven Air's executive Wi-Fi, the screen froze. A red prompt blinked. Access denied, not authorized for priority network. She blinked, tried again. Same result. She reached for her phone, switched to LTE, opened the Havenair app, and that's when her account locked. The screen turned gray, a message flashed in all caps. This profile has been flagged. Contact an airline representative. No explanation, no support chat, just exile. She stood, walked briskly to the nearest service counter, bypassing the hesitant stares and half-turned heads. The attendant barely glanced up. "I need a manual override for account recovery," Celeste said evenly. "My credentials have been disabled without cause." The woman at the desk blinked, clearly out of her depth. We don't really do that at this desk." Celeste leaned in. "Then tell me, where can I go when an entire airline cuts off a customer from their identity in its system?" The woman gestured vaguely. "Guest relations? Or maybe try baggage claim?" Celeste turned before she answered. She didn't need more dismissals. As she passed a vending station near the gate, a security officer with a polished badge and a too casual smirk stepped into her path. "Ms. Vaughn," he said, tone breezy but forced, "we've received a report that your carry-on exceeded size limits. It's been rerouted to cargo." "That bag passed TSA clearance. It was with me the entire time." "Sometimes our teams make judgment calls," he shrugged. "It's already been sent." "To which flight?" she asked. "Because I haven't boarded mine." He hesitated. Too long. She narrowed her eyes. "You don't know, do you?" "We're doing what's best for all passengers, ma'am." She stepped around him, said nothing, but inside something snapped. Then came the moment that drew real stares. As Celeste sat down again, trying to breathe through the thickness in her chest, a woman nearby fumbled her suitcase, knocking it sideways into the aisle. Celeste instinctively stood, reached down, and lifted the bag upright. It was heavy, awkward, metal-framed. No one offered to help. Not the two young men scrolling TikTok nearby. Not the airport staffer in a Havenair vest standing 5 feet away. Celeste turned to him. "Could you give me a hand?" He blinked, turned his head, and walked away, wordless, like she didn't exist. The woman who dropped the suitcase didn't thank her, didn't even look up. Celeste sat back down, wiping her palm against her slacks. Her breath came slower now, but deeper. The insult hadn't been loud, it had been surgical, public, controlled. That's when the refreshment cart arrived. The attendant handed snacks and drinks to nearly everyone in the vicinity, except her. When she raised a hand, the man stopped, checked his clipboard. "You're not on the registered priority list," he said flatly. "Water isn't a privilege," she replied. "We've been instructed to be selective. Some passengers have been flagged." Celeste's jaw tightened. "And what am I flagged for?" she asked. The attendant didn't answer, just rolled the cart away. In the silence that followed, a man muttered under his breath, just loud enough, "Always some drama." Celeste didn't react, but inside her, the storm found focus, and this time it wasn't going to pass quietly. The boarding lane for Flight 882 to Zurich had begun to move. Group 1 was called. Travelers surged forward in smooth choreography, suits pressed, passports in hand, purpose in every step. Celeste Vaughn stood from her seat, spine straight, eyes fixed ahead. Her breath was steady, but everything else inside her pulsed like a tightened wire. She walked toward the gate with the confidence of someone who had nothing left to prove, and everything left to claim. Trent Rowe was already at the podium, crisp grey suit, clipboard tucked under one arm. His practiced smile barely concealed the exhaustion settling into the creases around his eyes. He didn't expect to see her again, not here, not still standing. As Celeste reached the desk, boarding pass and ID in hand, Trent raised a hand, not in greeting, but like a traffic signal. "I'm sorry, Ms. Vaughn," he said, his voice smooth as a press release. "There's a hold on your profile. You're not cleared for boarding." Celeste held his gaze. "I never cancelled my flight. I never changed my booking. I've been reassigned and stripped of access, without explanation. You did this." Trent gave a performative sigh. "Your original seat was reassigned due to a manifest conflict. And your current status? Well, I'm afraid you're not on the main cabin list either." "A manifest conflict you fabricated," she said. He didn't flinch. "Mom?" "Say it," she interrupted. "You downgraded me. You flagged me. You made the decision to erase me from this system." A uniformed security officer stepped forward, hands at his belt, calm, rehearsed. "Ms. Vaughn, we're asking for your cooperation." He placed a hand gently but undeniably on her shoulder. That was the moment. The terminal paused, sound muffled by tension. A woman halfway into the jet bridge glanced back. A teenager lowered her headphones. Two businessmen pretended not to stare but didn't look away. Celeste's voice was razor-sharp, low and cutting. "Remove your hand." The officer hesitated. She stepped back, breaking contact without force, but with intention. "You don't get to touch me because your system mislabeled me." Behind the desk, Trent motioned again. Another officer joined the first. They formed a wall of politeness and posture, inching her away from the gate. "Let's move to the seating area, Ms. Vaughn. You've been flagged for further review." Celeste blinked once. "Review of what?" she asked. There was no answer, because there didn't need to be one. She had already been found guilty of refusing to disappear. With every step they took, pushing her farther from the jet bridge, other passengers flowed through the line behind her. A mother with a stroller, a man with espresso, a young student with earbuds, all moving forward, while Celeste was moved back, not denied, dismissed, reduced to a procedural inconvenience. Her phone vibrated in her coat pocket. She didn't reach for it yet. She wasn't ready to speak, not here, not in front of them. Not until she knew the moment would land like thunder. Then the second buzz came. A different vibration, a coded signal. Her fingers closed around the phone slowly, as if preparing a weapon. She glanced back at Trent, still pretending this was under control, still unaware that his next 5 minutes would define the end of his career. Celeste lifted the phone to her ear. No pleasantries, just 2 words. "It's time." The words left her lips like a detonation. "It's time." Across the ocean, in a high-rise overlooking Lake Geneva, a secured line lit up on the desk of Amira Klein, Chief Operations Liaison at Helios Capital. She didn't hesitate. No confirmation needed. The sequence had been agreed upon weeks ago. Within 90 seconds, $600 million in venture support was pulled from Orion Air's transatlantic contract pipeline. Simultaneously, a compliance flag was triggered at the Department of Transportation in Washington, D.C. An automated notice, laced with time-stamped metadata, signaling a breach in federal non-discrimination standards. A whistleblower clause, buried deep in a decades-old provision, was quietly activated. Back at JFK Terminal 5, Celeste lowered her phone, her thumb hovering over a second app. One touch, and her internal legal team at Sable Point Holdings received a secure bundle, scanned reports, video footage, formal complaints, neatly catalogued and tied to Trent Rowe's employee ID. She stepped away from the officers like a general retreating into position. They let her go. They didn't know why, but something in her posture had changed. Stillness became pressure, silence, strategy. At the help desk near gate D14, a woman in a Navy Haven Air blazer looked up from her screen as Celeste approached. Before the woman could speak, Celeste slid a manila folder across the counter. The corner hit the desk with a soft click, not loud, but final. "I need this delivered to Leonard Westbrook, VP of International Ops. Now confirm receipt within 15 minutes." The woman blinked. "Excuse me." Celeste leaned in, calm, controlled, icy. "Tell him it contains 3 months of internal audit data, unauthorized reroutes, discriminatory downgrades, service flagging, 5 terminals, 22 employees, all under Haven Air management." The woman's eyes widened. She took the folder. Celeste didn't wait for thanks. She walked back toward the center of the terminal and took a seat, facing the gates, waiting not for a plane, but for a system to collapse under its own arrogance. Minutes later, the digital displays flickered. Small at first, then widespread. Flight 882 to Zurich, operational delay. The boarding desk went still, phones lit up, whispered directives passed between staff like faulty wiring, sparking beneath the surface. Across the glass wall, in a private meeting room above gate D6, suits began to gather. Executives from Orion's Eastern Division. Faces tight, movements clipped, A junior staffer stumbled past with a stack of emergency briefing folders. The storm had reached the control tower. Celeste's phone buzzed again, this time with a secure alert. Capital withdrawal confirmed, legal team engaged, DOT notification acknowledged, press inquiries inbound. Then another message, shorter. Estimated loss over 5 fiscal quarters, $615 million. Celeste closed her eyes for just a second. Not out of relief, but precision. She reached into her coat, pulled out a compact scanner and pressed her thumb. A third transmission sent. A formal cease support order to Nexus Strategic Holdings, Orion's Asia-Pacific expansion partner. 30 seconds later, a red flag appeared in the Orion vendor system. Celeste didn't rise. She didn't speak. But somewhere inside the network, the company's foundation began to fracture. And on the top floor of the concourse, Leonard Westbrook froze as the folder reached his hands, and his assistant whispered 2 words he never thought he'd hear. It's her. The executive briefing room above Gate D6 was no longer quiet. Voices clashed like steel on steel behind the frosted glass, outlines pacing like ghosts. Leonard Westbrook stood at the head of the table, the manila folder open in front of him like a confession. The evidence inside wasn't just damning, it was terminal. A compliance officer leaned forward, whispering into his ear. She has legal grounds to trigger full audit exposure. If this goes public, we don't recover. Not in this cycle. Leonard didn't respond. He knew. His fingers trembled above the edge of the folder, eyes fixed on one name, Trent Rowe. Downstairs, Trent was still issuing instructions at Gate D12, unaware that his career was already over. His voice was sharp, clipped, pretending things were under control. He barked orders to reset boarding lines, to contain the optics, to update manifests. But the tension in his throat gave him away. He hadn't noticed that the lines had slowed, that no staff moved without whispering first, that he was no longer being listened to, only watched. Then the call came through his earpiece. Rowe, Boardroom B, now. He stiffened. Copy that. The walk down the private corridor felt longer than usual, each step echoing louder in the sterile silence. His reflection in the glass walls looked thinner somehow. Inside the boardroom, 3 figures were waiting. Westbrook, a legal rep from Orion HQ, and a federal compliance liaison who hadn't smiled since the Nixon administration. Trent entered, still playing the part. What's this about? The legal rep didn't waste time. She slid a single-page document across the table. Do you know who Celeste Vaughn is? Trent smirked. A disruptive passenger. We had to escalate. Westbrook spoke for the first time, low and level. She's not just a passenger. She's the CEO of Sablepoint Holdings, our 3rd largest private stakeholder. She controls critical capital, backing 3 of our infrastructure vendors and half of our East Coast logistics contracts. Trent blinked. Impossible. It already happened, the liaison said. Her firm just triggered capital retraction protocols. We're facing an estimated $615 million loss over 5 quarters and 3 open investigations, including a federal non-discrimination probe. You didn't just make a mistake, you created a pattern. The legal rep slid a second folder across the table, 24 profiles, all flagged, all women of color, all rerouted under Trent's oversight. This is your resignation, she said calmly, tapping a line on the paper. Sign it, or we release this to every major outlet by 5 p.m. Trent stared at the paper like it might explode. He didn't move. His mouth opened, then closed. No excuses left, no cover to hide under. Back in the terminal, Celeste received the final alert. Rowe removed, executive statement pending, market response in flux. She didn't smile, she didn't gloat. She stood, walked to the nearest gate, not to leave, but to watch, to be seen. Because what she had just dismantled wasn't a man. It was a system, and what rose from its ruins wouldn't be built on silence. As boarding resumed behind her, no one dared ask if she needed help. They knew she wasn't here to fly, she was here to land something far more permanent. Power doesn't always speak with a microphone. Sometimes it sits quietly, watches, waits, and when the moment comes, it moves with such precision that by the time anyone realizes it's there, It's already changed everything. Celeste Vaughn didn't raise her voice. She didn't throw a scene. She never begged for the seat she paid for, the respect she earned, or the status she built. She didn't need validation. She needed accountability. That's the difference between noise and leverage. In a world trained to ignore quiet strength, Celeste proved that the most dangerous person in the room is the one they thought could be erased. Not because she shouted, but because she documented. She observed. She prepared. Too often, systems are designed to chip away at people 1 inch at a time, strip away dignity, cut access, deny space, until the person begins to question their right to even stand. But Celeste never questioned her right to stand. She questioned the system's right to decide who deserves to sit. Her story is not just about racism or sexism or power games in corporate aviation. It's about boundaries crossed and consequences delayed, until someone dares to draw the line and say, "No more." It reminds us that silence is not always submission, and compliance is not always peace. Sometimes the greatest form of protest is not a march, not a speech, not even a headline. It's a single act of undeniable correction, a voice that doesn't scream but recalibrates the room. Celeste didn't just cancel a $600 million deal, she cancelled the illusion that some people can be mistreated without consequence. So the next time you're told to step aside, to be quiet, to disappear, don't. Because if you've done the work, built the foundation, and carry the truth, then your silence isn't weakness, it's leverage. And when the moment's right, let the world feel the weight of everything they underestimated.